Hey everyone, it's Cass on Transform Your Life, and I wanted to share some thoughts I've been having for a while now regarding removing our binary perspective, right? Getting out of that black and white thinking where we are looking at things from a balanced point of view, from a balanced perspective, and we stop referring to people as either a narcissist or they're not a narcissist, right? And we move towards understanding deeply how narcissism exists on a spectrum and codependency exists on a spectrum. And the more we can understand that, the more we come into balance, right? And we do that by stepping into accountability, and removing the binary lens allows us to hold ourselves accountable versus always pointing the finger, right, at others outside of ourselves and being like, yeah, my ex was a narcissist and I'm not, right? This whole mentality of pointing the finger, which has its place when you are holding someone else accountable outside of yourself for their narcissistic behavior. But when it comes to coming into balance, it's also equally as important that we are introspective and we evaluate ourselves and we step into a language where we understand that we are all narcissistic. So it's time to get rid of that binary lens. And as I've thought a lot about removing this binary lens, I want to talk about in this video, the topic of this video today is removing the binary lens responsibly, right? Removing the binary lens responsibly. So what do I mean by that? What am I referring to when I have, I've witnessed a lot of extreme tragedy in my lifetime, not only when it comes to my own personal life, but I have had the privilege and deep honor of meeting people throughout my journey who have been through the most horrific forms of abuse you can imagine, to such significant levels of severity that most people would not actually believe that people are capable of doing such things. So as a woman who has lived through and survived what I have personally lived through, and also as a woman who has been a witness, who has borne witness to other human beings who have been through very sadistic forms of abuse to degrees and levels of severity that most people could never imagine. What I want to encourage people to do that will allow us all to come more into balance and be able to create more healing and equilibrium and transformation for ourselves and others is to, when we are removing this binary lens responsibly, I want to help people step into an energy of understanding what that is going to look like and what I'm talking about here in this video, because I have seen tremendous damage happen to not only myself and others when I hear just people in general in our society, or social workers or mental health professionals, or personal development coaches, self-help coaches, they have a tendency, all of us, right, have been guilty of this, of saying that we've all been traumatized, we've all gone through hardship, we all go through hardship in life. And it is true that we all go through hardship. However, okay, we all go through trauma. We all go through trauma. However, what's missing in this conversation is that we all experience different levels of severity. And if that isn't also a part of the conversation here, especially when you are addressing someone, if you are a mental health professional, if you are a life coach, if you are a personal development coach, if you are if you consider yourself a spiritual guru, okay, if you are in any of the fields that I just mentioned, okay, and you are saying we all go through trauma, even if it is meant, even if you are meaning it from a level that is, from a place that is, you have good intentions, okay? You can, inadvertently or unintentionally be causing harm to someone that you are talking to, and not knowing you are being dismissive of what they have lived through, because there are different levels of severity when you are dealing with each individual case. You have to look at everybody. You have to deal and address with everybody address everyone on a case-by-case basis, and understand and realize when you are removing the binary lens and you are stepping into a space where you recognize and realize we've all been abusive to each other on different levels, and we have also all been on the receiving end of that on different levels. Now, right now, I am being guided to reference a circumstance of somebody that I met, that I bore witness to what she lived through as she shared with me her story, that I will definitely not mention her name or ways to identify her, but I was given permission to share her story to raise awareness. And right now I'm going to be referencing aspects of extreme satanic ritual abuse. So for anyone who is in a place where you are not able or ready to hear about some very extreme forms of satanic ritual abuse, I highly encourage you to maybe click off this video, as I am going to preface this with a trigger warning, because a trigger warning is warranted. So I'm not going to get into her whole story right now, but this woman, okay, that I met, she is such an inspiration to me, and she's helped me be able to keep going and keep striving and never give up on my journey, no matter how alone I may feel, or the struggles that I may face, because she has been through such horrors that, although I wholeheartedly believe her when she shared with me her story, it is so difficult for most people to even imagine what she lived through her whole life. Ever since she was a baby, she started experiencing ritualistic abuse in the orphanage that she was born into as a baby. And she went through severe forms of human trafficking and ritualistic abuse all the way up to 28 years old. These severe forms of the sexual, ritualistic, satanic abuse that she lived through, okay? And she is a part of a demographic of women who suffered such severe degrees of mutilation that she can no longer sit down or participate in certain forms of mobility that we all take for granted without experiencing excruciating pain because of what happened to her. Now, I want you to imagine, okay, I'm being instructed by my spiritual team to share one other aspect of her story right now. And one of the things that she told me when I met her in the conditions that I met her in that are very, very not ideal, to say the least. That's an extreme understatement, is that she was so grateful to no longer be in a situation where she was waking up next to a pile of dead. This is so hard to say. Where she is no longer, she is so grateful to be existing in a reality now where she no longer is waking up out of a drug-like stupor next to a pile of dead children and babies. I'm pausing for a moment because I want the visual to sink in, and I want people to understand that this form of abuse where children and babies and adults are being human trafficked and ritualistically abused to this degree, that this is actually happening. It's going on under the radar, and one of the reasons I'm bringing this up in this video tonight is to really encourage and plead with everyone to be very cautious about continuing to say we all go through trauma and we all go through hardship, and just leaving it at that, okay? Because it would be very, very abusive and very, I mean, for me, I don't have a word for it. For anyone to walk up to this amazing, brave 28-year-old woman I met and see her, not know anything about her, see her in a struggle, or see her crying, or see her in any type of situation and have, somebody say to her, well, we've all been traumatized. We've all gone through suffering, okay? Speaking to a woman who escaped a high-profile human trafficking ring that was not the only form of human trafficking that she lived through, because it was a pattern of abuse that happened to her starting as an infant And as she worked to escape that as a child, she kept lining up with abusive predator after abusive predator after abusive predator, to where she never experienced any sense of safety or security or relief, because she was in such a vulnerable condition that people continued to prey upon her and do. Now, I haven't gotten into all the details of what she shared with me, but I'm sure you can imagine how bad it gets to a certain extent with the two things that I shared with you about her waking up to a pile of dead babies and children, and the mutilation that she underwent to her genitalia. And this is so hard for me to say, you guys. Please bear with me. The mutilation that happened to her anus and her genitalia, okay? Now, the point that I'm getting to, and I want to wrap this video up by saying, please remove the binary lens, the binary perspective responsibly, with a code of ethics where you are also understanding that not everyone is equal when it comes to the level of severity that we have experienced, okay? We need to address people responsibly with a code of ethics and not lump everybody in the same box, because we've all, quote unquote, been through trauma. Okay, we all have been through trauma, but we all have not been through the same levels of severity, okay? This is really important that we start adding to that narrative that everyone is saying, okay? And we approach things differently, and we are cautious about when and how we are using that phrase that all of us have been through trauma, okay? Because narcissistic abusers, sociopathic and psychopathic people use that phrase, okay, to harm people who have already been through so much, to dismiss their reality and to gaslight them. And it's so important that we become informed and we get to know people personally, and we ask permission, right, before we start saying and imposing our own opinions and views onto others when it comes to trauma. Because the reality is that you have no idea who is standing in front of you when you meet people, and it can take a long time for any one person to open up, especially someone who has been through significant levels of trauma. They typically will not open up to a person about everything that they have been through right from the jump, and it will take time for that person to actually relay to the people around them the levels of severity, the intricacies, the nuances of all the horrors that they have lived through, okay? So it's so important, you guys, to understand the need for a code of ethics, and being able to respond to people appropriately and approach people appropriately when we are removing a binary lens and we are learning how to hold ourselves accountable, how to hold ourselves responsible, everyone in this world, so that we can advocate for those who have been through a lot more than others, right? Let's not lump everybody in the same box. Let's see the spectrum and understand that there is a spectrum of severity. So that's everything that I want to share with you guys tonight, and I will continue in the next video.